Hello there. In this video we are going to look at the concept of a spring constant. So here we have two springs, and if you look at the spring 2 you see that this one is a little bit thicker. And as you can see here, the spring constant here is larger than the spring constant of a spring 1. The spring constant is a measure of stiffness. So the larger the spring constant, the stiffer the spring. And that means that the spring requires a larger force to be stretched the same. So let's have a look at one example here. So these two springs have the same natural length. The natural length here is 48 centimeters. I'm going to apply the same amount of force on both of them. So look at the force, 100 grams here, 100 grams there, and force is mass times G. Mass needs to be in kilograms, so 100 grams is 0.1 kilograms times, for simplicity, G I assume is 10, so we have 1 Newton. 1 Newton applies on both the springs here. And look at the spring 2, that stretches smaller than the other one because this one is stiffer. Now let's have a look at typical questions that you might have in the test. So the most difficult one is going to be a graph like this without any values, because if we have the values, let's say that is here we have 10 centimeters, and then here we have 10 newtons, and then 20 newtons. So you can work out the spring constant, force divided by extension, and then the larger the spring constant, the stiffer the spring. But in this case here, we don't have any values. We cannot read off the data from the graph. And how can we answer this question? The question is, which spring is stiffer? And just pay attention, both of them are a straight line, and the line passes through the origin, so the Hooke's law, this one, applies. So in this case, you can choose any point on the extension part, on the extension axis. For example, I choose this point here, and then you draw a line, vertical line like this, and then you can compare the forces here. So for the same amount of extension, spring A requires a larger force than a spring B. So that means that CA, the spring constant of spring A, is larger than the spring constant of spring B. So the larger the spring constant, the stiffer the spring. So spring A is stiffer.